Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Wherever you're watching or listening, share it out, like it. We are back with our Week 7 college football recap. My co-host Brad Miller is back. We picked some games to watch and talk about. So we'll go through some topics. We'll go through some of those games. Then we'll discuss who we're going to watch next week and talk about that. Brad, welcome back. I know you're a busy man, saving lives, making people lose weight.
Not saving lives, feeding some grumpy old veterans, maybe, but we got it done.
Making people lose weight. I don't know if I trust you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we try our best. Not always successful, but it works.
All right.
Okay.
All right, guys. I'm making sure my banners work. We all got this. The one person that's watching is probably me on my phone, so don't be too excited. I'm making sure it's working.
Okay.
All right. Topics. I know one topic I'm going to get out of the way. Lakers did win their championship for the NBA.
Yeah.
Big ol' asterisk next to it.
There's a new greatest Laker of all time.
Shaquille O'Neal.
I'm pretty sure you're just in denial at this point.
If LeBron wins 2 or 3 more championships, you could put him on the Laker Mount Rushmore.
I'm sorry, but did Jordan win titles with 3 separate teams?
No, because he didn't run away like a baby.
I don't think. Well, he did. He ran away for, what was it, a year? Retired.
He wanted to play baseball.
He didn't want to play baseball.
He already accomplished everything.
Dude had serious gambling debt and was like, I gotta go play baseball.
Do you know how much money he has?
I don't think it was debt. I think like the NBA was about to suspend him for doing weird gambling stuff.
They know better. They can't get rid of Michael Jordan.
Whatever.
So Lakers won their championship.
Whatever. Okay. This is over because I can't fucking stand to sit and listen to you talk about LeBron James.
It
pisses me off because you never like acknowledge that he's our generation's greatest player.
Now, we grew up with Kobe, or at least I did.
No, I mean, okay, we both did. LeBron is a better player all around player than Kobe Bryant.
All right, guys, here's the deal. I'm going to make Brad take a day off work. I'm going to take a day off work, and we're going to have a 3-hour episode of LeBron James because we don't have enough time.
Yeah. And anyway, just Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith jerking off in the corner. They're so excited about it.
Oh, goodness. All right. So they won their championship. What is that, 17 the Lakers got?
Yeah, they tied the Celtics now.
And who knows what will happen if we even have – they're talking about NBA may not come back till January.
Well, I mean, they just ended. And we've seen in the past what happens when, like, guys don't have a decompression offseason. Like, you want LeBron to get a real serious injury, possibly end his career, come back too early. You know? And at this point, who's selling more tickets, whether you love him or hate him, than LeBron James?
But I did see how people were tuning in more to football than the NBA Finals.
I mean, yeah, because it's the NBA versus the most popular sport in the U.S. Do you see what just happened there? Yeah,
guys, see, we're multitasking. We got the Bears game on. We're a bunch of unprofessionals here, but it's fine. Bears are getting ready to score. Hopefully I win my parlays and win $6,000 so I can retire.
Yeah, one of these days, one of those long shots will hit.
Can I tell?
What?
So we're gonna get to this later. You know what 2 teams screwed me over for winning $8,500 yesterday?
State.
No, I said the under on that.
Did you really?
I did, just because I didn't know Texas A&M's all over the place, Mississippi State's all over the place. I said Notre Dame, and then we're gonna score at least 60 because they were averaging 20-some and 30-some points a game. They did not.
No.
And then the Ole Miss one screwed me over.
It was rough.
So Lane Kiffin, you owe me some money.
We were talking, and I had been out lumberjacking, if you can't tell, all day yesterday, and finally came inside and turned games on. And thank God, I almost took the under on Memphis UCF. And if I would have taken the under and then watched them score 100 points, I would have gotten sick.
Well, those 2 games cost me to win $8,000-some. And if I won that money, I would not be here today.
You'd be retired.
I would have quit everything.
Yeah, I'm gonna gamble full time now.
I would have kept 1,000 in my account, withdrew 7,000, and kept that 1,000 to gamble. Is what I would have done.
You have to do taxes on all that, right?
Oh, it's like 10%. I know with Vegas, it's 10%. They have to keep.
Okay, Vegas keeps 10%, but the federal government takes 40%.
Well, if I don't claim it, they don't know.
They know because it's connected to your bank account. So
which bank account are we talking about?
Oh, the offshores one that no one knows about.
Because us educators make a lot of money. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Who said something nasty about Trevor Lawrence's mother before that game?
I don't know. That was one of the topics I was talking about. Who pissed off Trevor Lawrence and Dabo Sweeney?
I think, well, he had some like crazy streak going without an interception, right? And they picked him off. And I think that was like, okay, now we're going to hang 70 on you. And you're just going to have to walk away from the game of football forever.
So I love Georgia Tech when Paul Johnson was there, when they ran their triple option. And I'm not saying that's my offense, but I love Paul Johnson because he didn't have a play sheet. He was just like, oh, I'm going to call this. Yeah. And Georgia Tech kind of ran him out, but they forget how good he was there. And then what pissed me off was when they came out in their spring game, lined up in the triple option formation, wing tee, and then they were like, oh, we're just kidding, and went to spread. And I was like, this is karma.
Yeah.
And I said this on social media earlier. Someone posted it. I said, now I love that it was the way it was, but I don't even think Paul Johnson would have beat this Clemson team.
No, I don't think anyone's going to come close to touching Clemson till the playoff.
Until the ultimate Bama Clemson showdown again.
Unfortunately, it looks that way. Which,
no,
like, okay. I think we both agree that, like, I hated the BCS before.
Mm-hmm.
And you did too, right?
Right.
I think everyone did. It was a bad system. At least with the BCS, there was, like, something to argue about. But I'm getting really sick of seeing, like, the same 4 teams in the playoff.
Like, the only one I don't like being in there year in, year out is Oklahoma, because they do not deserve
it.
Right. It's really hard for people to sit there and say Bama shouldn't be there, Clemson.
Well, like, they should. They should be there every year because they're the 2 best programs in the nation.
People are just getting sick and tired of SEC dominating it. But it's fairly hard to argue, because that one year with Alabama and Georgia, you can't sit there and tell me Georgia wasn't one of the top best teams in the country.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to argue that. So that's why I almost think we should do, I think, like FCS level.
And how many teams do they put in?
You get like 60 some maybe, but you play less regular season games. You play like 9 or 10 regular season games, and then you do the playoffs. But then their playoffs is you travel, kind of like high school. Where we travel
Yeah.
to. That's what they did. That's exactly what they do.
Yes, you
Division.
have the right to have a home playoff game.
Right.
Can you imagine what a home playoff game would look like in Tuscaloosa, Alabama?
Right, but it's all about the money. That's why they don't do it. Because these bowl games, even though they're stupid, like Illinois to the Red Box Bowl. Like Bears are up 7-0 as we speak.
Dude, okay. My phone's behind.
So was mine, but our good friend Nathan.
Everything Nick Foles does gives me a heart attack. Everything.
Yeah, I don't know which heart attack is worse, him or Mitchell Trubisky. I don't know which.
Oh, Mitch is worse. He looks like there's a difference between being incompetent and confident, and Mitch, who was incompetent and had no confidence in himself.
Right.
And like that throw shouldn't have done that. It worked, but he did. Right. I don't know.
But I think they should do what that. See, it's all about the money, though. They want to play their 12 games, make their money. They want to have a conference championship game, make their money. Then they want to have the bowl games and the playoff. I think you can't tell me they cannot scale it back to 9 or 10 games, have some type of playoff, and there's two ways you can go about it. You can go about home playoff games and try to keep in a region where you're not traveling to have your bowl games be like the playoff round. We already do that. It's like, oh, the Rose Bowl is that first place, and then Orange Bowl is whatever. Why can't those bowl games be your playoff? Like, oh, round one is, I don't know, the Capital One or this or that, and just there's a way to do it.
I think you hit the nail on the head, but I think the thing that will keep that from happening is like think about how much money these universities make off their home regular season games.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to give up games just to have a better playoff format, But I also think it's hard that like I don't have a team like I like the Oregon Ducks, but other than them, I don't care about another school out west.
I
hating
out
them.
West. Like I said, I followed Washington State because of Mike Leach, and so I still might follow them, but it won't be like that. Like, so I agree. Out west, I don't care enough.
Yeah.
Ever since USC has been down, I don't care. Yeah, I don't know. That's why I don't care if the Pac-12 comes back. I really don't.
That's the thing. Like, I'm not looking for, and like I said, I'm an Oregon Ducks fan, and I don't care whether or not they play.
I care just because I want to watch more football. But then at the end of the day, and then here's another topic too. We can talk about Big Ten's coming back Friday, Illinois versus Wisconsin. They do not give themselves much wiggle room to make it into the football playoff picture. And I listened to this on the Pat McAfee show when he said this. Look how many games, and this is a topic, how many games are getting rescheduled because of COVID. But that's because they have time since they started right when they wanted to. Big Ten, do you have time? I don't know if you have any wiggle room if you want to make it to the football playoff.
No.
And the Big Ten handled it wrong, I think. I know what they were thinking. But again, I said this about other states. What did the SEC know and ACC know that the Big Ten didn't know? Instead of Big Ten shutting it down, they should have just said, we're going to delay it, allow the kids to practice. So then that way, when they want to come back, they could do it a snap of a finger. Since you shut it down, you had to give the team 3 weeks to get ready. They handled it wrong. They tried to play hide and seek. I heard a guy say hide and seek, and they try to see who was going to follow them.
Now, here's the other thing, though. I think the Big Ten could have a huge bonus to playing fewer games. Like if they have Ohio State go undefeated, they now are probably a lot less gassed than the SEC guys that had to go through their slaughterhouse of an all this SEC schedule. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then
you just have to say.
Then we're going to start having these arguments like we used to back before the playoff. Does a 9-1 Georgia team, if Ohio State gets in at 8-0 over a 9-1 Georgia team for some reason?
That's bullshit.
Or even an 8-2 Georgia. Let's say Georgia. I don't know who Georgia's going to lose to in the SEC after Alabama because LSU. I thought it was going to be LSU, but they suck now.
They're bad.
Auburn's down.
They're probably not that bad, but
no, they don't suck. They're just young and inexperienced.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State. If Ohio State goes undefeated, that's what's going to happen. But here's my question: and now BYU, I don't know how many games they're going to play, but let's say BYU is 9-0, and then Ohio State's 9-0. Who gets in?
Ohio State.
Okay, but then you got a 9-1 Georgia, 9-0 BYU. Who gets in? I would say BYU because they're undefeated, but then they're going to say, well, Georgia lost to the number one team in the nation in Alabama.
Number one team in the nation.
But, I mean, the top one or top offense in the league, Alabama.
Yeah.
So
admittedly, they got their asses spanked in the second. We're going to talk about this later in the show. But
all right,
do you just want to go to that right now? Because
yeah, and then I already said Big Ten's coming back. Looking forward to Big Ten football. I never thought I would say that. Usually looking forward to basketball for the Big Ten, but now it's football. I'm going to root for my Illini, and then another team I kind of want to root for is Michigan, but I want them to be Ohio State. Can they be Ohio State once? Just one.
I want to see it. I miss I feel like a lot of rivalries recently have become real lopsided, except for the SEC. Like SEC rivalries live up, but a lot of Big Ten stuff just recently hasn't been that great.
Nope.
I need Jim Harbaugh to go in there and, I don't know, kick Ohio State out of the state of Michigan. It'd just be sweet.
All right, so I always say we're going to go about an hour. Now we're 18 minutes in, so we're going to get right into it. So, Brad, I forgot to tell you what order we're going in, but you'll figure it out. So here we go. I'm just going to go in order of the game. So Friday night, BYU played Houston. BYU looks good. I know it's a close game up until the second half. Houston hasn't played as many games. I think this is Houston's second game. Hey, we had a viewer come in and leave. Thank you for joining us and then leaving right when it happened. It might have been me again. Who knows? Nathan West has texted me. If he's not watching and text me at the same time, I'm going to have an argument with you later. BYU ended up winning the game. What was it? 43-26. Houston was not dominating, but they were ahead in the first half. And then fourth quarter, BYU scores 22 points, and Houston doesn't score again. So what do you think about this BYU team? Are they playoff bound if they continue to play this way?
So that's what I think. They're on the edge of being in contention to make to the playoff. They're definitely a team that has a case that hey, we need more than 4 teams in the playoff. Because I think BYU at their peak may not be able to beat Bama, maybe would beat Alabama once out of every 8-10 tries. But that's a game I want to see. I want to see them play, and we're not going to get any of that this year, which stinks. Did you see the onside kick?
I did.
That was one of the most like well executed onside kicks I've ever seen.
Well, this BYU team, I need to find the stats so no one quote me on it. I don't think they get a lot of this last game they did. They had 9 penalties, but realistically, up besides the penalties, they're a pretty disciplined team. They
Yeah.
play hard. They're very disciplined in that aspect. Now the penalties, the targeting. I know one of the players had a targeting penalty before, which the targeting penalty is getting ridiculous. Like
It's a lot. That's what I said last week. It's hard to watch because you see these guys making good plays and they're getting kicked out of games for it.
But I'm going to read you off BYU's schedule. See, their schedule doesn't stack up to SEC because their schedule got blown up due to COVID because they're independent or they're
Ooh,
trying to play.
yeah.
They were supposed to play Army, but it got postponed. So I think they still are going to play Army at some point. That would be a big game. They have to play Texas State this week, which I'm a Texas State fan now, but Texas State is not going to beat BYU. I'm sorry.
No.
They're going to play them tough. Don't get me wrong. Texas State's going to make it interesting, but BYU is going to win. Then they play Western Kentucky, which Western Kentucky is Western Kentucky. Then they play Boise, which I think will be a good game. Then they play UNA. Then they play San Diego State. If that's the right schedule, I know it changes all the time, so I can look at it tomorrow and it's going to change on me. But they don't have a huge, tough schedule. But if they when they play Army, if they beat Army by 20 some points, I think that kind of shows.
But the question is like that's their premier win at that point, right?
But their quarterback's good. He has 1,641 yards this year. He has 12 touchdowns, only 1 interception. He is a junior. He's 107 for 136, 78.7%, and he averages 12.1 yards per pass attempt. Now, what scared me with this BYU Houston game, he was their leading rusher with 40 yards this game. So what scares me is if you're depending on him and you're going to go play Georgia, let's say they play Georgia the first round, it ain't going to work. So if they get the run game going, they're pretty good. Their defense, it kept changing. I was trying to watch their defense. They're usually a 3-4, 3-3. It's kind of what they stuck to. But Houston was tearing them apart after that second quarter, and they jumped to a 4-man defense. I'm like, that's not what you do. And it continued to happen. They were trying to figure it out. And then that fourth quarter, they said, screw it. We're going to stay that 3-4, that 3-5, and just see what happens. And
it worked.
It worked. So I think Houston
imploded. I mean, I like Houston. I like Dana Holgorsen, but they imploded on themselves. Like they should have won that game. They had every right to have won that game. But then, like we were talking about this before we went live, they punted the ball for 10 yards at one point. Like they started to make mistakes. And then you have that onside kick that the guys on the front line of their kick return just looked lost, didn't run to the ball. Like, I don't know. It's hard to watch, and there was a lot of it this weekend. Teams that start really well and then melt down.
Yeah, I mean, and then not trying to make excuses. Houston has not been able to play. This was their second game, but I mean, in 2 games they averaged 37.5 yards or points a game. They have 10 touchdowns. So I mean, they're on a good start, but that second half they did kind of forgot who they were. I still don't know why Holgorsen went there. He was at West Virginia in a bigger conference, and he kind of left.
I think West Virginia tried to get rid of him. Would you do that if you're West Virginia? Like,
you have a guy that is from the Mike Leach coaching tree, played and coached with him, but he took his offense.
State.
We'll get there, but Dan Holgorsen and Lincoln Riley just took that air raid and said, let's get rid of some of the concepts and run some run plays instead and do this up-tempo RPO stuff. And I mean, the first half they looked really good, but I also think but BYU. I think it's because of the games. If Houston had played just as many games, it would have been a closer game. But BYU was more conditioned, so I don't know.
I could see that, especially towards the end of the game. Those guys looked gassed.
They did, and it's because they run that up tempo stuff, which is great. But your second game with not a spring ball, not a summer. Yeah, you've had 4 games where they were postponed on you, but that's not the same as playing. And you're playing a BYU team that, like we just said a million times, they're on a mission to say we're going to try to make the college football playoff. And they might be that team that Boise tried to be a few years ago, that UCF has tried to be, and maybe they'll finally get it.
I don't know. My big takeaway about BYU is 2 things. Their quarterback, Zach Wilson, dude's a man. Like, stud, runs, throws, everything. Their wide receivers, at one point, like, I think I could have thrown for 200 yards. Like, he was just throwing jump balls. And their wide receivers looked 5 inches taller than every defensive back around him. Like, that's the thing that I think would make them competitive, even with an SEC school. They do have some real athletes, which you don't always see in some of these not lesser college programs, but smaller schools. So, all right.
I'm promoting this as we speak. I have to be the marketer. Next one, Kentucky and Tennessee. This did not go the way I thought it was going to go. Kentucky comes out and wins 34-7. And I tweeted this out. I said, is Kentucky that good or is Tennessee that bad? And so I wrote down here, is Tennessee overrated? And I think they are.
Now, that being said, if your starting quarterback, who you were just talking about with BYU, if you depend on your starting quarterback for almost all of your offense, and then he throws 2 pick sixes, you're done. Like, your team's going to just roll over at that point, right?
Yeah. 14 of 21 for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like
2 interceptions. You mean?
What'd I say?
2 touchdowns.
Or 2 interceptions. So, I mean, I was watching that game because like I said, it was one of the first games on. So it was the only one on I was watching. I will say this. Tennessee's run game looked good. There was times where they were running the ball and it just looked fantastic. They imposed their will with their offensive line. They were doing a lot of motions, a lot of wing back setups to run the ball. Then they were like, oh, let's do a short passing route. And this guy just could not read the defense for some reason. And then he got benched in the second quarter, brought in the other quarterback, and then brought him back in.
Well, they put in the other quarterback, and on his first pass, he threw an interception.
See that? We talked about it last time with Oklahoma when they benched Rattler, and I said I loved it because it kind of showed, hey, we're not afraid to bench you. But in this case, I kind of liked it too. At the beginning, I said, okay, I would take him out too. If you're Tennessee, who's supposed to do something good. But if you're going to do that, I don't know. I liked it in Oklahoma, then I also don't. I'm almost like, if you do that, I might as well just keep the guy in. He's like, you know what? Live with it.
That's the thing, like, to put the other guy in for one series, like, to me, it's got to be like a quarter. We're going to sit you down. You're going to watch the second quarter, and then you can come back in and try to get your head straight.
But I think Tennessee might have won the game if they did not have those 2 interceptions because their running back, Gray, he had 128 yards of rushing.
Okay, that being said, though, like, Kentucky was flying around the field.
Right, but if it wasn't for their defense, their offense was not anything special.
No,
100,
they
107 yards passing and 187 on the ground.
which, yeah, I don't know, but Kentucky's defense won them that game, which I wouldn't have expected, and I don't think you were expecting either. But again, I think Kentucky's probably the hardest school in the SEC to understand because I'll watch them one week and they look great. Well, not great, but they look very competent. And then the next week, I don't know if they're still at the same level and it's just their opponents are hot or cold. But every time I think Kentucky's going to do something, they go the other direction with it.
And their quarterback doesn't. What's his name? Wilson or
Yeah.
He's so inconsistent. There's a couple times he's good at the short pass game, and then they get to the red zone, they just can't score. So they're lucky they had the interceptions. Tennessee may have a quarterback problem because it was the second half of Georgia. Second half Georgia killed Tennessee, and now this happens.
So do you think case can be made that this week is a little excusable for Tennessee because they're still kind of licking their wounds from getting their ass whipped by Georgia?
I would say if it was Pruitt's first year, yes. Since it's not, you have no more. I know you're getting recruits in. I know this is happening. You're a Nick Saban coaching tree, so I don't know if you have enough room for that. It's the SEC. Now, if this was the Big 10 or the Big 12, maybe. It's the SEC where, and it's Tennessee. Tennessee has a rich program from years ago. And you're trying to get back to that point, and if you're not doing it, no. And my argument to that is, yeah, we just got our butt kicked by Georgia. We should impose our will on Kentucky and say, this is what we are. So I don't care if you're licking your wounds or not. You should say, well, we're going to go beat Kentucky. I think they overlooked Kentucky is kind of what happened.
I think that's – who do they play next week?
I'll tell you. You can talk. I'll tell you.
Okay, because I like that idea that, we just went into this big-name football game, played well for parts of it.
Well, they play Alabama.
Kentucky. What?
They play Alabama. That's what they were looking at.
Yeah. That is – I agree with you. They're probably looking forward to Alabama and forgot about Kentucky.
Because if I was Pruitt, I would say, okay, we just got beat by Georgia Georgia's good, but we kind of did it to ourselves. They did. They just weren't doing things. Now, Georgia's going to win regardless, but Tennessee could have made it closer. If I was the head coach, I'm not saying I'm better than Pruitt. He knows more football, forgot more football than I'm ever going to know. But I would have went in and said, we need to impose our will on Kentucky. I don't care if we win by 7 or 3. If we beat them to death where they can't walk after the game, then we get ready for Alabama, because now you think you had to lick your wounds from Georgia. Alabama's still bad from going to play Michigan in a bowl game last year.
Yeah.
And you have an offense that's scoring 40, 50 points a game. I don't know if Alabama's ever done that.
And it's not going to slow down. Like, I would be interested to see if Alabama hangs 40, 50 points on Tennessee next week.
And I'm not saying that these are the best receivers. We'll get to Alabama here in a second, but these are not the best receivers Alabama's ever had. But I think this is the best wide receivers together that Nick Saban's ever had.
It's like group speed.
Right. And it's big plays.
Mm-hmm.
And Jones is mad at how he played last year and how it finished, and he took it serious. And it's like, okay. Because I think he probably thought Tua was coming back at some point, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now he's like, this is mine.
Also, we're doing that thing again where we're talking about another game that we're going to talk about.
Because I'm avoiding the next one, because the next one we're going to go through in like 3 minutes.
Let's go.
Louisville and Notre Dame. Now, guys, this was a audible. We originally wanted the Florida LSU game. And that was one of the topics. Florida, was it 20 COVID tests or something?
Yeah.
Dan Mullen has it too now. They had to postpone the LSU Florida game till December, I think. So I had to text Brad. I was like, all right, who should we watch? And we thought this. I thought this was going to be because I bet on this game, at least 60 points combined. I thought at least they would each score 30. Just because LSU has some speed. They're only averaging almost close to 38 game. Notre Dame, boring.
It was probably the most boring game I've ever watched in my life. And I've played in some boring games, and I think I would have rather watched Oakwood triple option football than sit through this again. There are a couple things that I want to know your opinion on. So, is there the chance that Notre Dame's ranked lower next week because of this game?
No, because Georgia lost. But they should.
They should. They should have to, like, at a certain point, I feel like there are times where, like, Georgia's loss is excusable. Playing a game this close with Louisville when you're ranked 4th in the nation is not excusable. And I don't know what caused it, but this was bad. And okay. What did you think of Louisville going for an onside kick in the third quarter when you are still up a point?
I liked it because I don't know. I like it because you're trying to catch them off guard. They almost had it. If that guy, what a dumb rule. See, back in the day, I'm trying to remember. I think you could go hit the guy and then your guy could go get the ball. But since
you can't now.
Yeah, and I thought that was stupid because as the guy getting the ball, you could go get it beyond 10 yards. So to counter that, you should be able to go hit them to let the ball get to 10 yards. Now, I know it's dangerous, but that's why in practice, you have a guy. That's why your middle guys and your front five are closer together. Because if that were to happen, the rule is one guy goes to hit the guy comes in behind him, get the ball. Mm-hmm. We practiced that in high school. So why aren't you practicing that in college? You guys make way more money than I do, but I understand that concept.
Yeah. Admittedly, this is one of those, like, I would have loved it if it worked. But when it doesn't work, you just gave Notre Dame their best field position of the game.
Well, I don't know what was going on with Notre Dame. Now, I know that Ian Book's not the greatest passer of all time. He's a runner. But his stats from the game was 11 for 19 for 106 yards. So they did not pass it much. They came in and said, we're going to bring 3 tight ends, 2 tight ends, a fullback, and run the ball. Are they doing that because they don't have athletes? Because I know they've got some athletes.
Oh, they do. I mean, they looked physically way bigger than Louisville did.
Or I thought of this morning. Are they trying not to show much on film so Clemson later on down the road doesn't have anything on them besides, hey, they're going to run their quarterback and just run with 3 tight ends? Because they ran the same thing over and over and over again.
That's ballsy. Like, you about dropped a game because of it, and you shouldn't do that shit again. I mean, my biggest thing is, like, you should always you should use what you have to win the game you're playing right now. You don't worry about Clemson, whatever. When do they even play?
I don't know. I know that's probably going to be the ACC championship right there of
Yeah.
whoever.
But also, if you lose to Louisville, like, it doesn't matter. So go win the game in front of you and worry about that and not what the hell Clemson's doing or what they will and won't know. And if you're in college at the University of Notre Dame and your playbook isn't big enough that, like, oh, yeah, we can't show a version of something against Louisville because we're afraid to take it back out of the hat against Clemson, like, you need to fire your offensive coordinator.
There's also rumors that Kelly's looking at the NFL. I don't know if it's a head coach or like going to the NFL.
Who the hell would want him?
He's got some ties. There's a lot of rumors.
Nothing at Notre Dame.
It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Congratulations. Like,
And then
coaching the Bears, and I'll kill myself.
And then Urban Meyer's going to go to Notre Dame.
That would be fun.
He will. He said he wants to coach at Ohio State or Michigan, and he ended up at Ohio State and Notre Dame. That was one of the places. But
I wanted him to go to USC.
He might because of on his show. He's got Reggie Bush around him. And
yeah. Well, okay. Can we take a second to talk about how great that college football show is?
Mm-hmm.
With Urban Meyer, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, and what's his name? Notre Dame quarterback, Brady Quinn.
Brady Quinn.
Like, not only is it like the best looking group of dudes, but it's fun to watch them like talk about football. Because for me, at least, that was the group of guys that made me fall in love with football.
Yeah, when we used to play NCAA, Brady Quinn was a quarterback for Notre Dame all those years ago. Yeah. The USC teams were nasty.
And both those guys played in probably still the greatest college football game of all time, national championship, and lost to Vince Young, which is crazy because, like, I don't think I could name another member of that Texas team.
Yeah, I don't. It was right after him where I could start naming guys.
Yeah, when Colt McCoy came in.
And Brian Arakpo was on defense.
Yeah. Like,
and Shipley,
he was there for like 8 years. He was a 6-year senior.
He looked slow, but when he got the ball, man, he was fast. He looked slow, and then once he was in open space, I was like, he's a fast white guy.
Yep, absolutely.
Notre Dame plays Pittsburgh next, Georgia Tech, and then Clemson. So they don't play them until November 7th. I don't know. It's just a thought because I'm the type of yes.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It just like Notre Dame was very stagnant and they just ran the same thing over and over. So maybe that's who they are this year. And that could be the truth. Maybe that's what they're going to do.
Then you don't deserve to be the number 4 team in the nation.
No, I don't think so either. But I don't know. That was just a thought I had of, are you waiting till Clemson? But and you said it perfectly. See me, I'm the type of coach, I'll hand the other team my playbook, and I said, but you got to stop me.
Yeah.
Like, you would think that's how Notre Dame would be. Like, if Urban Meyer was there, that's what it would be like.
Because everyone knows what Urban Meyer runs.
Now, if Notre Dame was just running the football and every single play they got 10 yards and they scored 40 points, yes, run the same thing over and over. But when you're running over and over and you only score 12 points or whatever it was, like, good. And LSU or Louisville's not that good. They have some speed, but they're not the best, and you let them hang around.
Here's the problem. Like, we've been talking on the show this whole time about what do you do with a one-loss Georgia team, okay? If you're a team like Notre Dame that doesn't have as strong a schedule as those SEC guys, and you know you have to play the best team in the nation in Clemson late in the year, blow these teams out of the water. Like, do you remember a couple years ago when who was it? Somebody in the SEC lost. No, it was Texas. No, I'll figure this out. Oklahoma lost and then put a string of games together where they scored like 60 and 70 points a game.
Yeah, I can't remember if that was Baker Mayfield or Kyle Murray. It was one of the
No,
two, or is this
no. It was before Mayfield. It was
was it Bradford?
after Bradford.
Oh, he played for in the XFL.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
But they lost a game they shouldn't have. Or not, it was like a good loss, but it was a loss. And they just strung together like 60-point games on this FU tour that's like, hey, don't forget, we're still a really good football team. So to me, it's stupid to say, hey, we still beat Louisville, but you looked like shit. And you didn't look like the number 4 team in the nation.
No, and then we'll move on because we did this one longer than I thought, but it's more of us complaining. Like Notre Dame has the capability to score 40 points against Louisville. So is it because Notre Dame's offense was that bad, or is Louisville? I think Louisville's defense came and stepped up. Don't get me wrong, but Notre Dame should have said, "We're Notre Dame. They're huge. Their offensive line has to be 285, 310 pounds,
Oh, yeah, they're big boys.
and their tight ends are like 250, 60 pounds. Like, and they're fast. And you have Ian Book. And here's my thing as a coach: you have a quarterback that can run. RPO them then because now he have a threat of a runner and they're going to
Yeah,
be focused on him.
yeah, RPO and sneak your tight end out.
Like I don't get it. So part of me thinks they're waiting for Clemson or something, but that's pretty, like you said, it's pretty ballsy because if you lost this game, or are they trying to say it's COVID year? But if it's COVID year, you think you'd open up the playbook. All right, here's the one that you're waiting on, and it's going to make me cry, and I'm going to get pretty heated. Mississippi State versus Texas A&M. You can go first. Because we're 47 minutes in, we're almost done, but you can go first.
Decide how I want to go after your hopes and dreams on this.
I took some notes.
All of this is not on Costello. It's not. And I know you want to blame it all on him.
No,
the rest of that team is not good.
Well, I'll get to that. It's not all on him, but we'll get to it. I'll get to my spot here in a second.
Okay. Costello is one of those guys I feel like can look really good. He can also look really bad. And you got bad Costello again. And you've been on a string of bad Costello, which sucks, and I'm sorry. We were talking about BYU getting into the playoff. Is Texas A&M going to get in?
You know what? It's funny you say that. Again, guys, we take notes on Saturdays and Sunday mornings. This morning I went to the gym on the elliptical and I think about what we're going to say. And I thought of that. I say no because I don't know if they're not going to win the rest of their games. So if they are sitting there at 2 losses, they're not getting it. It's just not going to happen.
You don't think Texas A&M could win the rest of their games?
I don't see them winning the rest of the games. Just because it's Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher, who I think is one of the most overpaid coaches.
You think like it's that team that has stink on it, and it's like, okay, you're going to screw this up somehow. Kind of like Michigan. Michigan, right. That team that like I know you're talented, but you have head lice. Like, get away from me.
So before you continue on to what you're going to say, their schedule is they don't play again until Halloween, and they play Arkansas. Who we can talk about Arkansas in a second. Goodness gracious! Like what a big turnaround for Arkansas.
The first week, I was like, Arkansas looks good. I just want to remind people of that.
But like you said, they have that stink on them where they didn't win an SEC game for 10, 15 years.
Way too long. Way too long.
But Pittman, right, that's the head coach. He's a good guy. I've heard good things. And he changed, and it's the offense too. Like, but anyway, so they don't play. So Texas A&M doesn't play again until Halloween. They play Arkansas. They could lose to Arkansas. It could happen. Then they play South Carolina, who just beat Auburn.
Yeah.
Then they play Tennessee, Tennessee's Tennessee. Then they play Ole Miss. Then they play LSU. Then they play Auburn. One of those games, they're going to slip up, I think. Well, here's my question then. If Texas A&M has one loss, Georgia has one loss, Clemson's undefeated, Alabama's undefeated, is that your playoff right there? What if
Ohio State's going to come out of the Big Ten undefeated?
So then, again, that comes back to Texas A&M. Let's say they're 9-1.
Okay, then let's do this. If today you had to pick one team, Georgia or Texas A&M, to fill out the fourth spot,
Georgia.
I hate Texas A&M. I think their ceiling is higher than Georgia because they actually have a passing game.
Georgia has a decent passing game.
Yeah. Then what happened we're going to talk about this.
Because it's Alabama.
But I think the ceiling for Texas A&M is just higher. Their defense isn't as good as Georgia, but I think, like, in my head, it's the same way that I'm kind of okay with OU, like, making the playoff consistently. Like, when they made it with Baker Mayfield, in my head, I'm like, okay, if Baker has a crazy run, they could win. Right? Like, Texas A&M has that higher level on top that I think makes them more playoff worthy than Georgia. Georgia, great football team. I think we saw them max out last night, but we'll talk about that later.
No, I don't see Texas A&M making the playoff. They're going to slip up and not get in.
Oh, I'm not saying I think they will, but I'm saying if they were to win out, I think they should be in the playoff.
They'll be in the conversation, but they won't. It's hard to sit there and say Texas A&M with one loss and Ohio State with no losses. If BYU blows out the rest of their schedule, it says it's COVID year. Do you just say, screw it, let's put BYU in and see what happens?
Yeah.
Because you already lost some money anyway from only playing 9 or 10 regular season games. Might as well just say, screw it, we're going to put them in and see what happens. But anyway, go ahead with your Mississippi State, Texas A&M.
That's really all I had. I wasn't going to be very mean to you.
Can I be mean? Can I be mean?
Give me a second, sir. I'm talking. I will say Texas A&M is built for this. Texas A&M is built to deal with the Mike Leach passing attack. Because they're still, we talked about this before, they're still kind of a Big 12 team. And that's where I'll end it.
So it's not all on Costello. Well, let me rephrase this. Up until this week, there was times where it was on him. I watched the reads, and he was not throwing good balls. So there was times where it is on him. Yesterday, some of it was on him. That offensive line, like, there was times I watched them pass block, and the one guy be like, because when you pass protection when we played at Oakwood is way different than what it should have been. No offense to anybody.
Yeah.
When there's half sliding, there's 4-man sliding, there's big on big. Mike Leach he was the offensive line coach when he first started coaching. He does big on big. But then there's times where you have to slide, and it's either 3-man slide or 4-man slide. I watched so many times where on a slide, it was the guard, the center. They would look, you have to have your head on a swivel. So when you slide this way. But if you know there's pressure, you have to be able to go back. Or whatever. There were so many times where they slid this way and looked. Then they come back, and then they see a guy, and they're like, wait a minute, I want to go back and touch nobody. And 3 men would get through. And I'm like, that's embarrassing. And so that offensive line, so when Mike Leach gets the type of offensive lineman he wants, when he starts getting, because his wide receivers this is the best starting Mike Leach team he's had from a Texas Tech or a Washington State. But what sucks is you're in the SEC with it. If this team was in the Pac-12 at Washington State, he would win more. Texas Tech, he won right away because he was coming in with an offense that fit the Big 12, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So offensive line's got to shape up. But then he took out Costello and kind of just said he had enough and kind of put in their other quarterback. Can I tell you that his mechanics look better than Costello?
Yeah.
Not saying this is your answer, but the future is bright if you can develop this kid. He's got a better looking mechanics of throwing the football.
Costello's got a really weird delivery. It almost, it's like watching a left-handed quarterback. It makes me like a little physically uncomfortable to watch him throw the ball.
Right. And then I blame the offensive line, but then where some people might say, is it the offensive line or quarterback? It was the offensive line. But then all of a sudden, so here's the numbers. If you just go by numbers, which I hate, I love going by numbers, but I love to watch the film. Film talks more. Costello was 15 of 22 for 99 yards. He only averaged 4.5 yards of completion with one interception. His QBR was 14.4. Rodgers comes in 15 of 18, 120 yards, 6.7 yards of completion, and one touchdown in a short amount of time. It was the Nick Foles effect. When Nick Foles came in for the Atlanta Falcons, boom, boom, boom. This kid comes in, boom, boom, boom. So I don't know if that's your answer. I won't be, but Mike Leach came out last night and this morning. Quarterback is being reevaluated.
It should be.
So I think he's had enough. And I will not be surprised if you see his first name's Will, if Will starts. And the wide receiver for Carolina Panthers just was killed.
Dead.
So,
okay. So can we stick a fork in Mississippi State? They're just DUN done.
I think they're not define done. Like,
well, like they were never going to compete this year, but I think at this point they're just not interesting anymore.
Now, going into the season, I thought they would compete, but it depends on your definition of compete. What's happening now is not what I thought, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Now, is Mississippi State's defense underrated? Their defense is not too bad. They're just put into tough situations.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think Mississippi State will probably do something crazy at some point in the rest of the SEC schedule. Like they'll knock somebody off they shouldn't. But as of right now, until I see that other quarterback play some more, I could care less about Mississippi State, which stinks. I think that they had the chance to be a really fun football team.
I will continue to watch them regardless of the teams that we're going to watch. And if I hear ever again that Mike Leach should change his offense, I'm going to come to somebody's house and because so I was Coach Mackey, shout out to Coach Mackey. He has a YouTube channel that does a lot of offense. He loves throwing the football. He loves Hal Mummy's offense, like the Hal Mummy way of doing things. He did a YouTube live the other night with the guy who runs a quarterback school, and I got in a little debate with a guy on the YouTube chat because he was talking about it's time for Mike Leach to adapt to what Lincoln Riley does and do GT counter and do RPOs.
Yeah.
And I commented and I said, that offense is sexy, don't get me wrong. That's not who Mike Leach is. He thinks this is what the way Mike Leach goes about this. If Mike Leach one day says, okay, I want to run power more. Now he does a little bit. Or let's just say GT counter. Like, I want to run GT counter. In his mind, he's going to say, what passing play or two am I going to take out of my playbook? He does not want to add things. He wants to rep.
Yeah.
And I like that way of thinking. But some people are like, oh, it's easy. Just put it in. And for my time coaching, when I was offensive coordinator, I won't say the school because I don't want to get into that argument, but when I was offensive coordinator, that wasn't the talk. That was, we're going to have 6 run plays. And that was it. And we're going to, I kid you not, we had 6 run plays and probably 15 to 20 passing concepts. And I think you watched me, I was signaling like crazy. It was so bad. And if I ever hear Mike Leach stuff again, I'm going to flip. Leave him alone. I like his way of thinking. I get it. Like, a part of me is like, yes, he needs to run the ball more. But that's not what he thinks. So if that's not the way he thinks, and he's had success, see, that's the thing. He's had success. Now all of a sudden, he's in the SEC and it's his first year. They want to start talking. And I'm like, just leave it. And I will say this. If I ever meet Hal Mummy, I'll flip out because Hal Mummy's like, somebody said this. It's not me. Somebody else said this, and you got to think about this. Who's had more Division I head coaching success, Mike Leach or Hal Mummy?
Probably Hal Mummy, right?
Nope.
Mike Leach, huh?
Bigger time programs. Like,
okay. Yeah.
Big time head coaching job was Hal Mummy with Kentucky in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Leach has had Texas Tech, Washington State, Mississippi State. So whose way of doing the air raid works more? Has been Mike Leach. Because they're not the. One day I'll have to show you all the passing plays of the air raid and compare them to Hal Mummy. A lot are the same, but Mike Leach just tweaked them.
Yeah.
Because it's the quarterback. Like, he wants the quarterback to read things. Hal Mummy's way is, you're throwing here because I said so.
Yeah.
Mike Leach's way is, I want the quarterback to read the defense because we're not out there to see it.
But the problem is, like, the Hal Mummy way would probably be better with Costello.
Right. I said this. I agree. If you're installing it, you might want to do Hal Mummy's way first to say, you're throwing here because I said so.
Yeah.
And then after a Luke Falk type of quarterback that was in the system for 2 or 3 years, now you could say, okay, we run mesh, it's 1, 2, 3, get rid of the ball. Like, read here, read here, read here.
Yeah.
Because we got to remember, Costello came from Stanford that runs a board this long of pro style plays.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, they're going to be fine. I think here in 2 years, you give them 2 or 3 more years, you're going to see them compete. But what's scary? Old Miss will too. That's the other scary part.
Yeah, the entire state of Mississippi is going to be fun in like 2 years.
And then we'll see. I don't know. Auburn, I want to talk about one day because they should be good. Anyway, Roll Tide. Our last one. Bama versus Georgia. I don't even have to take notes on that one.
I'll let you start.
So, okay, I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay.
Nick Saban got tested positive with COVID-19. And it wasn't karma, but I remember watching the game last week, and you and I were talking about the mask. Did you see him right after he shook hands last week? He took the mask off around everybody. I'm like, that defeats the purpose of wearing it. Just because you wore it during the game, the moment the game's over, you don't take it off.
Yeah.
And then he got it. And I was like, I didn't want him to get it. I don't want that to be karma because he's, 68 or 67 years old?
There. Yeah.
Now, he's healthy.
He is. He's a healthy guy, obviously takes care of himself. And the biggest thing is, again, I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to know everything about this, but they say that if you're heavy set, you're more likely to be affected by it. So, like, guys like your boy Mike Leach, like, if he were to get it, it could get a little scary. But I think a guy like Nick Saban, probably kick it.
Can I say I love Mike Leach? And if Mike Leach ever listens to this, I want to sit down with you and talk about aliens and life and
pirates.
He's really not that heavy set. Like, he fluctuates a little bit. There's times where he's really skinny looking, and then there's times
in my head I'm picturing like the biggest I've seen Mike Leach. I know what you're saying. There are times where he's thinned way out, but Anyway, when I
So
heard Saban had it, I was like, of course he does. He's wearing that stupid mask that doesn't stop anything. And whatever. And then it ended up being a false positive.
well, they said he was asymptomatic, and so he has no symptoms. So this is where I get confused. He tested positive what Sunday or Monday,
Yeah, Monday.
and then there was reports that he was asymptomatic, so he was doing well because he's not showing any symptoms. And they said that's why he's more dangerous because he's asymptomatic.
Yeah.
Well, then it turned into, oh, they claim it's asymptomatic false positive. And I said, well, what do you mean? And I don't know. I don't get it. That's above my pay rate of.
So here's the deal. So he tested positive, and these tests do have a certain rate that's allowable, but like, hey, every once in a while, this is going to blow positive and it's not really positive. Okay. So then he quarantined and then had 3 days with 24 hours in between each test where he tested 3 separate times and they all came back negative. So that's what you have to do to prove that that initial positive was a false positive.
Right. I just saw asymptomatic first, and I was like, okay, well, at least he's not showing symptoms. He'll be back next week, is what I thought.
Yeah.
But then they were like asymptomatic false positive. So I'm like, to me, it's one or the other. It's a false positive, he doesn't have it at all, or it's asymptomatic.
Yeah, I don't understand that wording at all.
But yeah, anyway, so my question was to you when you saw that, and I saw it, I was reading reports how this be the reason why Alabama doesn't win. But then I saw, well, Alabama's a well-oiled machine. So you had Steve Sarkisian, who has had head coach experience. He's been in the
Yeah.
NFL. He's running just fine. But one thing that was interesting was they said, well, you're going to miss that defensive adjustments from Nick Saban, and you're going to miss those game time decisions without a Nick Saban. But there was rumors they were going to set up a Zoom, and he was going to watch the game and tell them from home, like what to do. So when you heard that, did you think Alabama was going to lose, or were you like, this is the only way they're going to lose if he wasn't there?
To me, if Nick Saban's not there, Alabama does not look as good in the second half.
Right.
Right? Like they don't make adjustments to stop Georgia.
Right, I agree.
So I do think that the end of that game probably would have been a heck of a lot different if Nick Saban wasn't there. I also think if Nick Saban wasn't there and they lost, he might have died. Like he would have had a heart attack and probably not made it back.
Like, we've seen him mad before. If they would have lost, we never would have seen him more mad. He would have died on the podium.
Oh hell, he was mad, and when they won, the game was over, and he was mad.
Well, that's kind of where my respect factor comes in sometimes for him, because if you read his books or read anything, he wants to win. Don't get me wrong. He deep down, he wants to win. It's for him, it's how you win. So if you win the game, but it was sloppy, you're not trusting the process, you're not doing what they ask, he will get mad.
Oh yeah.
Because it's about the process, and he worries about the result. I don't care what people say. He's going to sit there and say, "Oh, it's not about the result; it's about the process." He cares about the result, but that's where he gets mad. Now, sometimes when you're up by 30 or 40, and on our eyes, we're like, "What are you mad about?"
But I think his idea is like the second you start to half-ass things, like even though it's small and you're winning, that kind of attitude leads to losses.
Mm-hmm.
So like not following the process leads to bad results.
Right. So when I first saw that, I said, "Okay, they may not win because Nick Saban won't be there, but they're in good hands." But like you said, it might have been a closer game. It might have been, I don't know, 27-24 instead or something. But I will say how the game started was crazy. Interception by Alabama right off the bat, and then an interception right back.
Interception by Georgia first, right?
Yeah, Alabama threw the interception, and then Georgia's Bennett threw right off. Alabama's defense is the best at jumping and blocking on the.
They have to be like 6'6", right?
Oh
They're
yes,
in front.
if not taller.
Because Stetson Bennett is 6'5". Like he's tall, and he was
Yeah.
getting balls batted down. Like
I will say what helped Alabama this week was not seeing an up tempo offense, because that's the thing. Alabama and Nick Saban will be the first to tell you this. They struggle against an up tempo offense. Now they'll win, they still win, but they struggle. When you line up and try to play them like what Georgia did, you give Alabama time to adapt and adjust. Because Bennett, I'm looking at right here, 18 of 40 for 269 yards and 2 touchdowns. That sounds great, but then 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
So you allowed Alabama to play you, and so Alabama needed this game, like a team to slow it down for them to adjust.
Mm-hmm.
And then their offense, goodness gracious almighty. Jones was 24-32, 417 yards, 4 touchdowns. Now he had the 1 interception, which that hit the ground. I'm going to go to my grave saying that hit the ground.
That was not an interception.
Harris for them for rushing, he looks like oh my goodness, not Derrick Henry. It was another quarterback they had.
Mark Ingram.
No.
Are you talking the one that went to the NFL and got fat?
No.
Trent.
Oh yeah. He looks like him and runs like Derrick Henry.
Oh, okay. Eddie Lacy was the one that got fat. Remember?
And had to do CrossFit.
Yeah. Okay. My question is, who is more important to that team? Mac Jones or Najee Harris?
See, that's a good question. Because a part of me wants to say Jones, because they're more focused on passing the ball this year, it looks like. The only reason why Harris has all those yards because he gets huge runs. But he ran the ball 31 times last night.
Yeah.
So right now I want to say it's Harris. At the beginning of the year, like a couple games ago, I said it was Jones. Now I'm going to say it's Harris because now they're going to be looking at him. And Jones is going to be able to pass the ball way better.
Yeah. Because we talk about Alabama's made this big change in the last couple of years where like they're a passing attack now. But the heart and soul of that offense is still like we have an all-world college running back and can still punch you in the mouth repeatedly with him until you submit, which is like what Georgia wants to do. And really the only way Georgia wins games is doing that. The nice thing about Alabama is they can shift gears and be like, okay, we're going to go spread concept and air the ball out.
Well, that's why this Alabama is one of the most dangerous we've ever seen on offense, because you got Jones who's going to throw it for 417 yards. Then you have Harris who's going to run for 152 yards. But the reason why you're able to do the passing attack, Smith for them had 167 yards receiving. And then how do you say his name? Waddle, whatever. 161 yards receiving. So, like I said, these are not the best wide receivers that's ever come through Alabama, but these are the best wide receivers together at one time, I think, with their speed. That's what saves them. Jones is throwing the ball perfectly. Like, you want to overthrow him. If you're going to throw the deep ball in a corner, you throw it to where the defender cannot touch it. So if it's out of bounds, it's out of bounds. If it's off the guy's fingertips, that's where you want it. These guys are so freaking fast that they get there. So he is so comfortable doing that. And can we talk about, I don't know if you remember the whole game. They ran that tunnel screen, that fake bubble screen, and that tunnel screen. That was sexy. I'm stealing that. I wrote it down. That
was one of the coolest play designs I've ever seen. Because, like, I would never have – I thought that guy was a blocker.
Yeah, when they were doing that, and I saw him turn to go throw it, I was like, "Oh my god, this is gonna get blown up," because I already saw the defenders coming,
Yeah.
and I was like, "This can get blown up." Because here's what I do: I usually watch the box, and I can tell what's going on by the box. I didn't. I was watching that, and I was like, "He's gonna get blown up," and then all of a sudden, I saw the other guy just come back. I was like, "Ooh," and then I saw the offensive lineman. I was like, "Ooh,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Okay, Sarkisian, you're not gonna pull out Atlanta Falcons," and
See, okay, this is what I was talking about with Notre Dame. Okay, it's really obvious that the last couple weeks Alabama had to have run that exact bubble screen once or twice, and they were like, "I know Georgia's going to blow this up, so let's make a variation of it that is going to be successful."
right, and they didn't wait till later on. They were like, "This is Georgia. We have to do it now."
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like the point of this is, I hate Notre Dame so much, but the point of them not opening their playbook up and actually running plays because they're worried about Clemson down the road. No, run your plays that are successful. And then if you're worth half a damn as an offensive coordinator, like create a variation of that play for Clemson. Right?
Right, and that's we're on the same page, like, especially because I love offense, and this is a Mike Leach thing too. And I know I keep going back to Mike Leach, but he has good ways of thinking. He goes, "Why are you saving stuff for later? Run it, make those defensive guys look at it, then you get a variation later on. Just a tag." That is a simple thing. Instead of calling it a bubble screen, you're just motioning that guy and just saying, they signal stuff in. But I guarantee you that play call was something along the lines of H move or H motion, um, fake bubble tunnel or something. So he goes, "We're going to fake the bubble and run this tunnel screen instead." And that's how simple things can be.
Yeah.
Um, and now what are we going to see later on? They're going to run that again. They have a fake receivers go to block. You know, see how they. Sorry,
Yeah.
guys. I think I jumped. I jumped there. But you're going to see a variation of that play again later on.
Oh, 100%.
So Notre Dame better take
Because
some notes.
yeah. Um, my other big question about this game is, to me, Stetson Bennett came back down to earth. Like he was playing above his head
Mhm.
a little bit the last couple weeks, and they were winning games because Georgia was physically better than the other teams. You have to go to your other quarterback now, right? That dude from USC. Because I think you've
Uh,
seen peak Stetson Bennett, and it wasn't enough.
uh, no, you give him. I don't know. I feel like you give him another chance because I'm not trying to make excuses. It's Alabama.
Okay, but if you're Georgia, Alabama's your boogeyman, where it's like we can be the second best team in the SEC. We're just never gonna do anything to put us over the top.
Or because this kid was playing really well. Now all of a sudden you want to take him out. See, Costello is a different story. Costello's been doing this for 3 weeks. So that's a little different.
Yeah.
This kid does this for another game. Then, yes, then you go back and say, let's put this other guy in. So here's my
backup's a scrub.
But here's my answer to that too from a coach. Go about practice this week. If this Alabama game really affected him that much in practice, he's not going to look good in practice. Then you could say, okay, let's go to him. Or do you try the next game and say, let's get him confidence so when we get into the playoff, maybe we play Alabama again, and he's got more confidence. So it's a hairy situation, but those are the way I'd go about it.
But again, like we don't know Stetson Bennett personally, obviously, but is it a question of confidence? Because watching him, I didn't see his confidence really waver. I think it's a question of skill. And
But I
I
mean,
don't think Stetson Bennett has what you want to get you over the Alabama hump. So why not rip the Band-Aid off and put a kid in there that might have a little more arm talent and give
because
you
he looked good for the previous 3 weeks. So you can't just sit there and say, "Well, this one game,"
second half.
but it's Alabama. They just didn't adjust well.
It could have been the Chicago Bears. Like you have to. I don't know. To me,
If
it
this
makes
kid's
no sense to continue to roll with this dude if you watched Alabama spank his ass for an entire half of football. And then they played him once. You know what's going to happen when Alabama plays him again?
but that's where you can't. If that's how young is Ben? Is he pretty young?
No, he's a senior.
Is he a senior?
Yeah.
I don't know because I keep comparing to Costello, where you play this way for 2 or 3 weeks, you're done. We're gonna go with someone else. He played very well the first 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden you play the team that's probably gonna win the national championship, and you kept it close the first half, and you come out the second half. Now, I give credit to Alabama. That was more adjustment. So I kind of blame Kirby Smart and them. You should have adjusted better.
For a counter adjustment, which they didn't do.
Right. So I can't put it all on the kid. It has to go on the coaches too. Like you did, players win games and coaches lose them. And so you did not adjust very well. Like if he's throwing interceptions, why is he throwing interceptions? Let's change the game plan or like let's adjust. But that's why Nick Saban is huge on that defense at halftime. Nick Saban's not the defensive coordinator, but you best believe he's making adjustments.
I think if you're going to go in there and beat Bama, you almost have to show up as Team A and then go into the second half as Team B with a completely different game plan. Even if Team A thing worked, it worked for Georgia really well in the first half. But Georgia might have won that game. Can't believe I'm going to say this. If they came out and just air raid, up-tempo air raid in the second half.
But what sucks is, again, that's not what they do. So
I know that's not what they do. And that's why Georgia is never going to beat Alabama. They're not.
No, if Georgia needs to get away from this pro-style offense. It works until you play Alabama. And that's
It's literally probably the only team in the NCAA that it will just not work against.
So here's what Kirby Smart needs to do, and I can't believe I'm saying this. Kirby Smart worked for Nick Saban. Now Nick Saban's 22-0 against former. He's going to former assistant. He has to coach again next week against Pruitt. Like almost every week, he has to go against. Dabo Swinney said this years ago. We cannot recruit to win the ACC. We have to recruit to beat Alabama and adjust. Kirby Smart needs to recruit and adjust to say, how do we beat Alabama? Not saying you overlook the rest of the SEC, but they need this. I'm not saying they go air raid, but I think they just can't do this pro style stuff much longer.
No.
They need to be able to sit there and go, we're going to go spread. Go to Alabama. Alabama's not pro style anymore. They're a spread, but they're going to run the ball.
If you look at it before they made the change with their offense, like Alabama was susceptible to this same shit, where it's like if you find a team, which there aren't very many, but if you find another team that can be as physically imposing as you, pro-style offense doesn't work anymore.
Right, and they made that. It was right before the college football playoff thing came about because they were under center I formation double tight, and it worked back then. And then, and Nick Saban hated the change. I know he did. Anything you read about him, he wants to run the ball at you. He wants double tight ends, like whatever. And then Lane Kiffin comes along and kind of changes that. And Nick Saban, he made that adjustment, and Kirby Smart's going to have to make that decision. You might love this pro style. You may love having your two running backs. You could do that with your spread. You could do the same thing. But at least you're putting yourself in a situation to say, now we're going to beat Bama.
Yeah. Now we're going to take these freak athletes that Georgia has and put them out in space where they can function.
Because I think Kirby Smart, they keep recruiting for defense, thinking maybe that's what we'll do. If we have a defense, control Bama, control whoever, then our pro style offense can keep us in the game, which was true the first half. It works. Now you have to adjust.
Till your offense starts costing you points.
Right.
Which is what happened.
And
I have one more thing to say, and we are way over time again, so we got to be better at this. Why in the hell do people keep hiring Alabama cast-offs?
because it's the same thing like the NFL. NFL is worse. Those Bill Belichick coaching trees don't work at all.
No. Andy Reid coaching tree, maybe.
And that's what I want to know, that these Belichick what do Belichick's offensive coaches do? If I was a Belichick assistant, I would be a fly on a wall and take everything I could and mimic it. So I don't know what happens. Do they just not really like the way he does it? And then they go off and say, well, I'm going to do this. And then you
I
go,
don't know, but I think Belichick's defensive guys are worse. Consistently. Oh, look at Matt Patricia. It's terrible.
He'd be a good just defensive coordinator, but being a head coach is just not what is going to work.
And I think part of what, I know Nick Saban allows fired coaches to come in and hey, sit with us, come in, learn how Alabama does their stuff. You're not technically hired, but you can just hang out for a while. I know he does that. But does part of you think Saban's figured out, I'm going to bring these guys in that are flawed, drastically flawed as head coaches, let them sit in here for a year or two, and then Tennessee's going to hire him, and I won't have to worry about beating Tennessee for the next 5 years?
I really don't know if Nick Saban looks at it that way.
I mean, I would, because it's working. And what percentage of the SEC right now is Nick Saban coaches?
A lot. And I was trying to think. Jimbo Fisher is a disciple. He was calling offense for him before. He did okay at Florida State. Now it's just kind of falling apart. The most successful one that I can think of, and somebody out there will correct me one day, is Kirby Smart.
Yeah.
The only teams he loses to is Alabama and just a random maybe LSU or something.
But here's the thing, obviously these guys are not going to beat Nick Saban because they all want to do a version of what Nick Saban does, but it's Walmart brand Alabama. That's what they're trying to turn the school into. Why not go out of left field and hire a guy like Mike Leach? That's why I loved that hiring so much, because it's well, this isn't the traditional SEC bullshit Nick Saban send-off coach. We're going to zig where everyone else zags and maybe hire a guy that makes us competitive.
I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. And that's a conversation of you're just recycling coaches. You're just doing this and doing that, or you need some fresh blood. But realistically, if you looked at it, when Nick Saban first got to Alabama, a lot of his assistants didn't leave right away. It's all of a sudden the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And I think they're just kind of hoping that they'll turn into Nick Saban. But I got to give Nick Saban some credit. The past 2 or 3 years, his entire staff leaving and have to get them back, a whole new staff, and they just don't miss a beat.
Not at all. Look at what's happening to LSU now. That happens to Alabama every year.
And they don't miss a beat.
Yeah, they missed a beat last year, and they were still a 2-loss football team?
Yeah, you lose your NFL quarterback, and you're still right there.
Yeah. That is the testament to what Nick Saban is.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. All right. So we went over. So the first one time we ever did this, it was 2 hours and 10 minutes. The last one was like an hour and 15. Now we're an hour and 29. So we're okay. So
Figure it out.
so here's where we'll go for next week. And I know Brad wrote it down, and I wrote it down. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. One game we're going to talk about, and depending how long we talk about it, is Illinois. We are Illinois fans. We're either going to have an actual conversation or it's going to be a sad minute.
Illinois sadness minute.
It'd be an Illinois sadness minute. So Illinois plays Wisconsin Friday. That'll be a game we talk about. I don't know who will win this game. I really don't. I think Wisconsin will, but I don't want to pick a winner or a loser.
Yeah.
So we'll move on. So another one we'll talk about because the Big Ten's coming back is Nebraska and Ohio State. Scott Frost, I don't know if he's on the hot seat, but he's got to turn it around quick. He did it at UCF. Now he's at Nebraska. But he's got to realize Nebraska is going to be that team where he has to run the ball. That's just what it is. I think Ohio State comes out and says we're Ohio State still. And I hate Ohio State.
Yeah. I hate agreeing with you, but Ohio State wins this game. They'd probably win it big.
Because Fields is that their quarterback. He's good.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. Another Big Ten that I'm looking forward to this one is Michigan and Minnesota. People are all over Minnesota because of last year and PJ Fleck. I think he's a good coach, but I never trust a guy wearing a tie coaching a football game. That's just my rule.
Yep.
I think we're going to pick the same team, but we'll find out. I got to go with Harbaugh and Michigan. But I will think it's going to be closer than we all think.
Nope. Minnesota. Row the boat.
Yeah.
That was me rowing the boat.
If you show up with a paddle next week, I'm going to lose it.
I have one. I'll bring it in if they win.
So I'm going to go with Michigan in the big house. I don't know where they're playing at. I think it's at Minnesota. Houston and Navy, story of two different offenses. Houston has the air raid 2.0 or 3.0 where they run up tempo and this and that against Navy. Navy squeaked away against East Carolina 27-24 or something. I think Houston gets mad and comes back and wins the game. So I'm going to go with Houston.
I'm going to go Houston too. I can only be wrong so many times. So I'm hoping eventually they swing back and Houston has a good game here.
Then the next one, we're not going to have as many games. There's not a lot of good games. I mean, they're all good games, but there's not as many like these huge games like Bama and Georgia. Auburn and Ole Miss. Auburn lost a heartbreaker there to South Carolina. Bo Nix did not play very well. I think Gus is going to take over play calling from Chad Morris one day. Ole Miss lost to Arkansas, which I was shocked because they did not look the same. I think they are heartbroken from the Alabama game.
Yeah.
This one's tough. It's a tough one. You go first. I have to think.
I have a personal aversion to ever picking Auburn for anything. So I'm going to take Ole Miss. I think they can't look as bad as they looked this week again. And a Lane Kiffin team, I think, performs better than this. So I'm going to take Ole Miss.
I was going to take Ole Miss, but since you did, to keep it interesting, I'm going to take Auburn. But I think it's going to be a closer game than what it could be. Or it could be
Is Auburn still ranked next week?
They will be just because they were
preseason.
I mean, what were they, 12 or something?
Yeah.
I think they still –
because they were 18, 15.
I think they still end up being ranked. But if they lose to Ole Miss, they're done. They're not going to be – especially with the Big Ten coming back.
That's one of the few things I think you and I got right from our first week doing this is Bo Nix is not really a good quarterback.
No, like he had some good flashes last year, and then now he's fallen apart a little bit.
Yeah. Okay,
He's-
last one. I'm trying to keep us on schedule, Steve. We're behind down distance right now.
I think that was all we had besides Illinois, Wisconsin.
We said we were going to keep an eye on OU, TCU.
Oh yeah, then we'll keep an eye on Oklahoma and TCU. They both had the week off, so I don't know if that was good for Oklahoma. I'm going with TCU because I think TCU is going to come out with a game plan of we're going to run the ball, run with our quarterback, and keep it away from Oklahoma. And they're going to try to keep Oklahoma in front of them with the 4-2-5. So I'm going to go with TCU.
And I will pick OU. I think the Texas game may have been a turning point for them.
I would agree with you if they didn't have this week off.
Yeah, it's kind of rough to get like a signature win, get your season started, and then have to take a week off. But Lincoln Riley's a good coach, and 2 weeks to prepare for TCU. I think he'll come out on top.
So there's our picks, and then we'll just add the Illinois game, Wisconsin, but we won't pick. That'll be happy hour, happy minute, or sad minute.
Sadness minute, more likely. So,
all right. What else?
Okay, good talk. This is really good radio, Steve. We're really good at this.
Yeah, we had a guy comment, James Lill.
Yeah.
And he said, fuck North Carolina. I lost money on them.
I mean, we didn't even bring them up, but yeah.
So, James Lill, I don't know who you are. Thanks for leaving the first comment.
I feel that, though. That was rough. Also a good game, man. I wish we could have talked about it because this is one of the best interceptions I've ever seen by that D lineman. But if you didn't see it, go watch the highlights. It's a great game.
And Florida State plays Louisville.
That might not be a bad game, actually. Florida State's new quarterback seems really competent.
Well, it's funny, guys. Brad texted me, and I said, I'm not going to watch that because Florida State sucks. And then I'm watching the Bama-Georgia game, and they come up, and they were like, oh, Florida State's up 21-0. And I was like, what?
And then almost imploded.
But I was not going to leave my
31-7 and then gave it away.
I was not going to leave my Bama game, though.
Yeah, no.
All right. So, guys out there that listened, thanks, or watched it at some. If you watch it at some point, great. If you watch it now, great. Whatever. If you listen to it later on, great. It doesn't matter. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. We're gonna try to do it again next weekend. Tune in. We'll see you.